going back onto SF,
Yeah.
phase 1 hills.
Yeah.
You had already done the first 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
How did you find it this time, being stronger and fitter?
So the course had changed. So
Okay.
UKSF selection had changed a little bit. Hills phase was now 3 weeks, not 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt more positive in that I'd got to 3.5 weeks on the first Hills package with minimal knowledge and training. I thought, well, apart from an injury, if I'd got to 3.5 weeks being like young and naive and not well trained, hopefully I would get through Hills phase on this course, sorry. And subsequently that did happen. I was, I had more experience. I was a qualified PTI, so I knew, how to stretch properly after the day's time on the hills. My admin was a lot of the hills phase is not just being fit and robust, but it's also having your admin squared away, having your shit all in one sock basically, and having your admin squared away. And you see a lot of the guys that come back in after a day on the hills that just literally ditch their burger and jump into bed because they're knackered, are then scrambling around in the morning trying to sort their stuff out, and that takes its toll over 3 weeks, even a week. Guys are off the course, so it's very much admin based as well as being physically fit and robust. So yeah, my admin was always squared, and I was in a much better position in terms of being able to get through the hills phase in a positive manner,
and stronger mindset probably, right?
And a much stronger mindset. Yeah, totally.
How did you feel after that? Because that's phase 1, right? And phase 2 is
so UKSF selection the hills phase is all the same. So briefing course and hills phase is the same for everyone.
Okay.
So everyone goes through the same process, and then you go, depending on what branch of the special forces you're joining, you then would go off to do your specific. So the special forces communicator route is slightly different to SAS and SBS. So
Okay.
SAS and SBS then prepare to go to the jungle. The special forces communicators then prepare to do a field scenario based training package and a comms phase as well, because ultimately you need to still operate in those environments, but also the comms equipment, and utilize the comms equipment that the group use. So you go off and do that phase for the next period, which is good couple of months. So it's pretty full on. For the first 6 weeks is in the field. So you're different elements, different environments, different things, different comms training. But yeah, the main course go off and do the jungle, and we do a comms phase, and an exercise phase.
And with your kind of background, did you find that background was helpful for you to do that part of the special forces? Yeah,
definitely. I'd operated in that environment with my time at 299 to some degree. I'd worked with the guys, so yeah, I knew I felt very comfortable in that environment, as in the way I operated. Obviously, I was still on a selection course and I was still under scrutiny, and I was getting grilled all the time and punished all the time for a number of different things and beasted. But yeah, ultimately, from what I was delivering, from my confidence, I felt pretty confident in the environment that I was in terms of being able to utilize and operate the equipment, to be able to operate in that environment under that pressure, because I'd already operated in that environment.
That's cool.
Which helped massively.
Good. Then after that phase, is this where you kind of would come back together in the SF?
Yeah. So the rest of the selection then is, so you get to a point in selection where, again, you're not guaranteed a pass. You're not guaranteed a pass until you've physically passed the course. But there's a little bit more in terms of you're likely to get to the end of the course, the end of selection, if you continue going on the way you're going. You come back together, and then you do a number of other bits of training together, including your jumps package. So your parachute course, and then
how do you find that?
I actually really enjoyed it. Yeah, I actually really
enjoyed
enjoyed
it. A decent vehicle.
Yeah. It was quite funny because there was a lot of guys. Who just would not stand in the door, and look out the back door. And it is quite terrifying, but it's fucking pretty cool. And I was always the person that would end up at the first person in the stick to jump out first, because no one else wanted to do it. Everyone else would follow my back out. So yeah, I think there's a video on my actually on my Instagram of me, some of my jumps video, and I'm always the first person out of the aircraft. And it's a rush of adrenaline. It's pretty cool.
You weren't ever shitting it?
Yeah, of course. I'd be stupid if I said I wasn't. But the thrill and the excitement that you get from jumping out of an aircraft is pretty phenomenal. So yeah, it was just a massive buzz. And I've not really covered it much. I was going to wrap it up maybe after we talk about my military career, but I was a very sporty person for probably about 2/3 of my military career. I used to race a triathlon to quite a high level. I was in the army team, and that buzz of pushing yourself on the bike and pushing yourself on the run after racing so hard through the swim and the cycle gave you a buzz. But this was just a different buzz. Like, it was really cool. Or driving, I was quite a high medic. I used to some of my time. I used to volunteer for South Central Ambulance Service. So I used to have a rapid response vehicle. I was quite highly medically trained, and I was a blue light emergency response driver. So my times, I would respond to life-threatening Category A calls in the local community, and like flying around on blue lights, knowing you're going to save someone's life, is also really exhilarating and really cool. So yeah, I would pick up these little thrills from different places, and the next one that I'd picked up was jumping out the back of an aircraft, and the back end of selection, and you start doing all your hypoxic training to do halo jumps and all that kind of stuff, which again is bizarre but really interesting. You go and do your hypoxic training, where you're at the point where you're about to pass out, and then you get oxygen back again, and you come back around, and it's learning how to, when you're in the back of the aircraft before you're about to do a halo jump. And for those listening, a halo is high altitude, low opening. So you're very high altitude, above 18,000 feet, and you open low. So you soar down for a period of time before you open your canopy. And you have to be able to pick up on each other in the back of the aircraft if someone is going hypoxic. So you do all that training, which again is stuff that you would never do in the Green Army, and stuff that you would obviously never do on Civvy Street, which is really cool and really interesting, where you learn about how hypoxia works and all that kind of stuff. So so the jumps package was really cool, and then subsequently went on to obviously badge and pass selection and become a Special Forces communicator, which was really rewarding after the few months prior to attending selection, or at least a year and a half before attending selection. I had a lot of negativity. I was going through a divorce and separation with my wife at the time. I wasn't really seeing my kids as much as I would normally, obviously living at home. I had this issue at ATR Winchester, and I was just a bit disgruntled with the military, and I wanted to sign off at my 12-year point. And then through this conversation with the CO at the time, who was very positive, gave me the opportunity and said, look, let's make it work. Let's get you on selection. And, I'm very thankful for him for pushing me down that route, and subsequently then passed, quite high up on the course, which was very, very rewarding, and definitely what I needed at that time in my life and in my military career. So, pretty cool.
You mentioned badging.
Yeah.
Stupid question. What's the badge?
So it's called badging, but it's a change in cat badge. So for those that badge into the SAS, they change cat badge. For the unit now, for the Special Forces communicators now, you do actually change cat badge. So we've got our own cat badge that we use. So you are badging into the unit. So that's where the word badging comes from.
Yeah.
Badging off other courses is you are in receipt of a badge for passing that arduous course, whatever it may be. So the badging process is probably a bit like an initiation process.
Yeah.
To some degree, the initiation phase is the selection. You've then earned that badge or earned that cat badge to then operate in that unit, basically.
Do you change colour of your beret as well?
Yes.
You do?
So same as the SAS, we get a sandy coloured beret. So everyone that operates in UKSF, regardless of whether you're badged or not, so medics posted in, drivers, chefs, you name it, anyone that's in that unit that operate, or that unit operates within, that helps function that unit, will wear a sandy beret, because they're ultimately under that same group.
Yeah.
But yeah, you earn your beret in a different way. You earn that for your, you don't just get it because you posted at a unit. It's a beret that you wear for the rest of your career, rather than just your time at that unit. So again, if you're posted in as let's say a chef or a medic, when you leave that unit, you go back to the Green Army, you would wear whatever your colour whatever colour beret your unit wears. It's the same as 16 Air Assault Brigade. However, if I was to leave that unit for whatever reason, and I went back to my original cap badge, I would be able to continue in theory to wear my sandy beret, because I've earned that beret.
Nice. I had a great question then, and it just disappeared. It just disappeared.
It'll come back.
No, it's gone. Darn it! It was to do with the berries and that, but there we go. It's come back. When someone joins the SAS,
yes,
they change ranks.
Yeah.
Essentially, they keep the one in the real army, whatever you want to call it, regular army,
their original cap badge.
But they move over to a different kind of ranking structure. How is it in your area?
So different. So everyone that badges SAS or SBS goes down to the rank of trooper. So everyone starts again. So regardless of what rank you were in your previous cap badge, so there was guys that were warrant officers that obviously went back down to troopers. In our unit, you keep that right. So the unit, the difference is the unit doesn't have the demand and the numbers that come through the door.
Right. Okay.
So in order to take everyone back down to the basic rank again and then start everyone again wouldn't work for the unit for starters. And ultimately, you're losing a group of people that have a lot of experience and are fit for certain roles once they've passed the selection course. So ultimately, you still go in a troop. You still have to work your way back up again, but you hold your original rank. So you pass as a sergeant, you go into a Sabre squadron, into a troop as a sergeant, but you're still one of the blokes. You've still got a troop sergeant and a troop commander, but you're one of the blokes. So yeah,
so it's like an internal ranking structure.
Yeah,
in some ways,
yeah, sort of. Yeah, yeah. So you hold your original rank, but yeah, it's a little bit different the way it's utilised, I suppose, is the best way to. But equally, if you pass as an officer, you're still an officer, so you'll still take on roles and responsibilities and appointments as an officer. So
yeah. Are you allowed to share who you were part of, or what are you allowed to share?
So I operated with A Squadron 22 SAS. Was my Sabre Squadron. That was my unit that I went into. Very, very proud to go into A Squadron. Awesome bunch of lads, phenomenal. From the day I turned up at the squadron, I say turned up, I was obviously at the unit, but the day I was fully embedded into that unit and part of that squadron, was really cool. Everyone was very welcoming. Obviously, there's still an element of you're the new bloke, so you have to earn your right to be, one of the blokes. But yeah, really cool and a really interesting job. And yeah, like I fully embraced it. I earned my way, and I worked hard for it. And I worked for I like to think I worked for the blokes. And I was, I was very much a team player. But yeah, I was very much accepted, and I still keep in contact with, some of the guys now. But yeah. So I was in A Squadron, which was very interesting. I went in at a very interesting time as well. So we was on UK counterterrorism. So again, a different change, a different thing to learn, a different environment to be in. So that, again, that learning curve was very quick, but equally very interesting. Yeah.
And you were in charge. This is probably dumb questions, maybe, but was you completely in charge of their comms? Or how could you explain your role? Without giving too much away.
Yeah, so similar to my attachment to the infantry.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't attached; I was embedded. So that would be my career for the foreseeable. But I was very much the comms guy for the group of blokes that I would deploy with for that job or task.
Okay.
So yeah, I had to be all over the whole of the squadron's comms infrastructure, everything down from work mobile phones, work laptops that were secure pieces of equipment, all the way through to covert and overt vehicle comms fits and all that kind of stuff, as well as being one of the blokes in the troop and one of the blokes in the squadron, because ultimately you didn't know what task was coming, you didn't know what was coming up. So range packages, I don't know, you name it that the UKSF are involved in, we would do training for. We were part of that, that troop, that Sabre Squadron. So we would carry out those tasks very much exactly the same. With a comms spin on it. So you'd have to be conscious of, when you're on the ranges, where are the blokes' comms fits on their body? How are they operating it? So I've got to be as effective downrange, as well as understanding where if someone's comms goes down, how am I going to withdraw myself from this contact to sort out their comms equipment to get myself back into the fight again? Or, where am I going to position myself on an exercise to be effective, as ultimately you're still, because of the numbers and the job and the task that you're going in to do, there's very minimal numbers on the seats for the aircraft going on the ground or the vehicle that's taking you out there. So you are one of the blokes. So you have to operate. You are a weapon system on the ground ultimately. So you all always have to think about that point that you are a soldier first and foremost, which I mentioned previously, but you still got that comms element in the back of your head. So yeah, you also always thinking about that and how, and you have to be all over it. Like you can't you can't fuck about when the shit hits the fan. You have to be either able to communicate to someone, this is what's wrong with your equipment, this is what you need to do, or you need to be in a position to effectively get to that person to rectify their comms issues to get yourself back in the fight. Because if they're out of the comms if they're having comms issues and they're out of the fight, that's one bloke out. You're then out as the SFC because you're having to sort his comms issue out. So that's two blokes out of the fight. Then if potentially something else happens, there's other issues going on. There's a lot to consider. So yeah, it's very, very rewarding, but very demanding all of the time, because you have to be all over your personal kit and equipment, your personal drills and skills, as well as being a good operator. Ultimately, because that's your job, that's your trade.
Yeah.
So.
Something that's just crossed my mind. This is a complete full circle from your first operational tour where you saw some really cool shit going on that you're like, I want to give that a go, to now, after going through everything you've gone through, you're that bloke.
Yeah.
You've passed selection. You are there. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is interesting when you look back at it, and you could probably say I've not been diagnosed with this, but I've probably got an element of ADHD. Like I can't sit still. I would never have seen my career when I joined in 2005 as being very linear. And yes, I was posted to this signals unit for 3 years, and then I was posted to this signals unit for 3 years, and I posted to this signals unit for 3 years, or whatever it may have been. A very linear, normal military career. I was always looking for that next challenge. I was looking for what's next. Where can I push myself? Where can I get that next buzz? And I got that through sport. I was always trying new sports and having a go at new sports, everything from triathlon to clay pigeon shooting. And I got that through my career as well. I didn't want to sit in a Green Army unit, not necessarily because it was boring, but because that wasn't me. I wanted to challenge myself regularly. I've gone on to do that now leaving the military, but yeah, I was always looking for that next challenge and that next opportunity to push myself, that next buzz, that next thing to drive. And yeah, I suppose the element of that was built probably when I attempted selection in the first instance. And I always had that little niggle in the back of my head that I wanted to still fulfill that opportunity. And, you know, times changed and opportunities and the way we look at things has changed through time. So I went as an SFC rather than a blade, as you call it, a member of SAS. But that's because the way I looked at things was slightly differently, and I still had the opportunity to be a bloke. I still had the opportunity to operate in a Sabre squadron, but I still got to bring in my comms knowledge and experience, and still develop that further whilst operating, you know, with some really interesting bits of equipment and with some fucking mega blokes, like blokes that have got your back when the shit hits the fan. Like it's really cool.
And you've got theirs, right? With the
yeah,
comms.
Exactly. And but, you know, vice versa. Like, yeah, I've got theirs on the ground. If you know, if the shit hits the fan from a, you know, I'd like to think my weapon drills are pretty good. I was a pretty good shot, and you know, I had pretty high med quals and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, likewise with the comms equipment. When the comms equipment's down, I was on it like a rash, because ultimately, if their comms equipment's down, I'm out of the fight or I'm out of the scenario, whatever's happening. So I've got to sort his equipment out, and then I'm not effective then on the ground as another bloke, because I'm worrying about ultimately the best deployment is I set the comms up, I do all the pre-deployment training. We all operate together as a body of men before we deploy overseas. All the comms equipment is tested and sorted. We go on an operation or on a job, as we call it. We had no comms issues throughout. You're fully embedded. You do what you need to do. You come back, and then, you know, jobs are good. And in certain circumstances, you know, you have comms issues. That happens. But most of the time, because the blokes are good in what they do, the SFCs are good in what they do, and the blokes that we operate with, you know, the guys in the Sabre squadrons are mega blokes. You know, they're all over it as well. So, you know, you don't very rarely have any hiccups or any snags whilst you're out on a job. So yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, to look back when I joined the army in 2005, and probably when I was in the cadets, I never thought I'd have a career that I had, and I would probably change a few things, looking back at my career now. But ultimately, I had a pretty cool career. I did some pretty cool stuff, so I wouldn't really change much of it. But yeah, I'd probably do things a little bit sooner and not left it as late.
But hindsight's a great thing, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
How long was you with that part of the military?
So I, all in all, a couple of years. I did with that unit. Yeah.
So within that couple of years, again, don't need locations or operation names or anything like that. But can you share something that stands out from your mind, your memory, that maybe you thought, this is fucking cool, or something that like it's just a great memory?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question, because the job in itself, yes, it has its ups and its downs. Sometimes it's mega stressful, but probably quite similar to being attached to the infantry. Okay. So being that bloke on the ground where you're doing your job effectively in such a even more so high threat location where there's less numbers of blokes. Less support elements to call upon. You are literally at the pointy end of the spear. It's fucking so rewarding. It is so rewarding. And I don't think, and a lot of the guys that I've talked to who operate or have operated in the Special Forces, you can't get that on Civvy Street. You cannot get that element of working environment on Civvy Street, and it keeps you on your toes. But it is ultimately so rewarding. And when a job goes well, and you're an element of that cog that's made that job work well and operate well, and it's been successful, that is mega rewarding. But yeah, just my time at the unit, like I was quite privy to some pretty cool environments and some pretty cool jobs. But yeah, like as a general broad just quite similar to being attached to the infantry and that the role with that, but on the next level. Like, it is pretty cool. The kit and equipment that you get given and issued, the jobs that you get involved in, you know, the people that you meet, the places that you operate, you know, the level of just general respect that you get for the job that you do is pretty cool. So yeah, all in all, you know, just a generally very rewarding, often very stressful, very demanding, very long days, long weeks. You know, but yeah, pretty cool.
All right. Is that coming to the end of your career?
That's pretty much near the end of my career. Yeah.
What is the end of your career? What made you leave?
So nothing made me leave.
Nothing made you leave. Okay.
So unfortunately for me, I was on a job, but whilst on active duty, I was involved in an incident, and that incident went very, very wrong. And I was subsequently shot numerous times and received blast and fragmentation injuries to my upper torso and both arms. So although what initially started off as a very interesting day at the office, whilst on a military training exercise, I was involved in an incident that went horribly wrong, basically. Again, without going into too much detail, the nature of the environment that we were operating in, the nature of the job that we were doing, the tasks that we were carrying out, a lot of things didn't go to plan that day and didn't quite roll out as efficiently as they should have done. And I subsequently ended up on the end of a weapon system, probably about a metre away. I was shot at with live ammunition and subsequently took 7 rounds to my upper torso and both arms. Yeah, quite a shocking day at the office. I remember most of what had happened to some degree. I don't remember physically getting shot. My brain, I've tried to work with a psychologist to piece together everything that had happened that day. And I got tingly talking about it. Everything that happened that day, and a part of my frustration on that day was actually not knowing fully what had happened. I obviously knew to some degree, but it wasn't until I got casevac'd out of the scenario when things started to piece together. But when it had actually happened, I just remember looking down at my arm and my arm was pretty much hanging off. And I was in that fight, flight, freeze scenario. And I knew that if I'd applied pressure to the upper part of my left bicep and squeezed as hard as I could, pressing my thumb into one of my main arteries, I could try and stem the bleeding whilst holding it over my head. And it was at that moment I knew I wasn't in a great place. And then I subsequently realised that as I was gripping my left arm and holding it above my head, that the blood from this arm was also spurting out quite profusely. And I very quickly hit the deck and went into shock and blood loss, and then suffered blood loss. I subsequently struggled to breathe. And again, luckily, I only decided to put my plate carrier on about half an hour before I went into the scenario, and that literally saved my life. It's hanging over my radiator in my office upstairs if you would like to have a look at it afterwards. But that saved my life. So I've got scarring down both sides of my chest, and obviously down both sides of my, but down both arms. And yeah, an element of shock and frustration because at the time I didn't know what had happened. I then subsequently knew what had happened, and my brain wanted to piece together the scenario in order to process it to allow me to continue and move on with my life. And my brain wasn't allowing me to do that. So I struggled for some months following that, which we can talk a little bit more about in a moment. But yeah, I had a pretty bad day at the office and a pretty bad day that, left me pretty well scarred up and not in a great place, basically.
Mm. And what's recovery like from that? Because you are obviously still here today. So you were taken out of that scenario and...
Yeah, so I was very fortunate. Again, you rely in those environments, you rely on the blokes around you. Everyone's got quite high med training. Everyone carries a personal med kit. So within within seconds of being shot, I was on the floor with tourniquets on both arms and a chest seal on my right chest. That's thanks to the guys that were around me. Massive. If I'd have not been in that scenario, that kind of scenario, if I'd have been on a Green Army exercise, that definitely wouldn't have happened. I probably would have been in a different environment now, if not, probably not here, because of the blood loss that I would have sustained from not having that early intervention. There is also a piece on Celox's website. So my arm was packed with Celox gauze to stem the bleeding. And Celox did a piece on my wounds afterwards. So again, it's down to the kind of equipment that we carry, as well as the blokes training around you, that ultimately, firstly, saved my arm, but secondly, saved my life. So I'm very thankful to the guys that administered first aid to me at that moment on the day. And then again, probably taking into consideration the scenario and the situation that we was involved in. I was CASEVAC'd very quickly. I was in a medical facility very quickly, and I was on the operating table probably maybe less than 12 hours after I got shot. So yeah, in terms of that process, that's why I'm still here today. That's why I didn't bleed out, and ultimately that's why I've still got my arm. And excuse the pun, I fell into the right hand, quite literally. The hand surgeon that I was under whilst I was at hospital is the best hand surgeon in the UK, without a doubt. And she was phenomenal, and she made snap decisions in order. Imagine how intricate, all the tendons and the muscles and the function of your hand is. It's a very intricate piece of equipment, and there was decisions that she was making throughout the number of surgeries that I went through, and I'll talk about my recovery process in a minute, but she was making decisions that were life-changing for me, and she ultimately, I said the process that I went through saved my life, but she saved my limb, which was really cool. What did that look like? Sorry, divulging a little bit, but so I went into hospital on the Friday morning. On the Thursday evening. So I got shot on the 31st of January 2019. I was in hospital. My first operation was on the 1st of February, the early hours in the morning on the 1st of February 2019. I then received 4 subsequent major surgeries until the following Friday. So Friday, the 8th of February, I went in for reconstructive surgery on my left arm. I don't really remember much of that week. I was very, very heavily sedated on medication, and basically being, I wasn't on life support or anything like that, but I was very much being monitored very closely to make sure I was good. I then went into surgery to have my arm reconstructed, and that was a 50-50 chance that I would come out with my arm still attached. The surgeries on the build-up to that were to debride my wounds, stabilise me, stem any bleeding, blah, 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 a number of other things, but mainly those things. There was also, that kind of stuff. Then on the following Friday, so on the 8th of February, I went in for reconstructive surgery. Earlier, I was on the Friday morning. I came out Friday evening, so I was in surgery for over 12 hours. Emily said it was one of the longest surgeries she's ever conducted on anyone. And I came out with my arm still attached. So very grateful for that process to happen. I was meant to be in hospital for 10 weeks, and I literally couldn't stay in the hospital anymore. So I spent just over 5 weeks in hospital in total. I had further 2 minor surgeries whilst I was in hospital. So I had 7 surgeries in total. Sorry, 6 surgeries in total while I was in hospital. 4 in the first week, 2 afterwards. And some of those were like skin graft repairs on my leg and a couple of bits with my arm. Nothing too evasive. And then it was just a case of learning to I had 3% function in my hand. So my hand was very much sort of like this. I couldn't use it. I couldn't operate the tendons that I had left in it. And I was very much limited to what I had functionally. So it was a process of working with the physios in the hospital to learn to use my arm again. But also I'd spent a lot of time lay flat in the bed. For anyone that spent any time in hospital, it's a process to getting up out of bed again and getting moving. subsequently, the first time I tried to sit on the end of the bed, I passed out. The first time I sat on the end of the bed and tried to stand up, I passed out. So it was very frustrating. It was quite funny to look back at, because every time I tried to do something, this blood, like rush of blood through my body, and I'd just pass out. I hadn't, sharing this with the listeners, but I hadn't been to the toilet for probably 10 days. I was very constipated. I just wanted to sit on the toilet and go for a shit, like normal bodily function that I couldn't do.
Yeah.
I was taking laxatives every day that just wasn't working. To the point where I started to feel like I needed to go to the toilet. They wheeled a commode into my wardroom, and I tried to move from the bed to the commode in a frustration of, yay, I can go to the toilet. And as I sat on the commode, I passed out. Oh, no. To wake up to about 4 doctors and a load of nurses around me, wafting me, lifting my legs up, trying to get me awake again. And then I woke around and went, the first thing that came out of my mouth is, I just want to shit. I just want to go to the toilet. So, very frustrating processes. But yeah, very much after the first week and coming around, recovering probably about 48 hours-ish, 72 hours after the major reconstructive of my left arm, was recovery time then. So what followed was a number of weeks in hospital, learning to use my hand again, learning to dress myself, wash myself, do normal daily chores, eat for myself again, till I got to about 4.5 weeks, at which point I said, I'm done with hospital now, I want to get discharged. And they were like, no, you're not leaving until 10 weeks. That's the recovery period that we need to fulfill. I went, no, I'm going home next week. They were like, well, you can't. I was like, I am. I want to get out of this hospital. I need to progress my recovery. So I worked with the physios, the occupational therapists and the nurses in the hospital to be in a position that after 5 weeks I could leave and continue my care at home. And that had a number of provisions, and those provisions were, I had a fully functional rehab facility at Hereford to go back to, which again I was quite privileged to have access to. I had access to the likes of physios, occupational therapists, nurses, all that kind of stuff at the unit as well, which was pretty good. So they were some of the conditions in order for me to leave early. And yeah, they said, right, these are some of the things that we want to see you be able to do in the next couple of days. So I started to live a bit of a normal lifestyle in hospital. So I would get up in the morning, I would make my bed, I would have a shower, get dressed. I would then spend the rest of my day either sat in my room at my chair and a table, or walking around the ward or interacting with, visitors and guests, that kind of stuff. And then at night time, I would do something similar to you would at home. I would wind down, read a book, brush my teeth, get into bed, turn the lights off, and obviously go to sleep. Eat 3 meals throughout the day myself, which was another condition that I had to fulfill. And then once they saw I could do that for a few days, they were happy to then potentially look at me getting discharged from hospital and then continuing care elsewhere. So that happened. We got to 5 and a bit weeks, and I was allowed to leave hospital. So I left hospital mid-March, and then went back to my flat in Hereford, and obviously the access to the rehab centre. The morning I left hospital, the afternoon I was in the rehab centre. So I started full-time rehab, 8 till 5 or 9 till 4-ish, whatever it worked out to be, pretty much every day for 8 months. So I was in full-time rehab, Monday to Friday, every day for 8 months, which was a long journey and a long process. A lot of frustrations along the way. I thought I could be the soldier that I was before, and I subsequently couldn't due to my injuries. I suffered more with my mental health than my physical health. I could see my scars. I understood the limitations of my hand and my arm. I didn't know what was going on up here in my head, and that's what I struggled a lot with. And I was constantly pursuing. I was in the pursuit of excellence again. I was constantly pushing myself to be the soldier that I was before, and I couldn't be that. So part of that process was in November of 2019. I asked to try an experiment to go back to work again. So I did something called a GROW program, a gradual return of work with a nurse, and try to return to work. It was very much an office-based job as a sergeant, and it didn't really give me the the opportunity and the time to test being in that environment. And so I went back to being one of the blokes to some degree, but I was very much stuck behind a desk in an office for most of that recovery period. And I was seeing the guys go out on jobs and guys go out on tasks and deploy overseas in the roles that I should have been doing, which was equally quite frustrating and quite a drain on my mental health, because it was quite frustrating. And obviously also to deal with the fact that I was on a military training exercise and I was shot by someone in that's meant to be quite a safe environment. It was another thing that I was dealing with. So yeah, end of 2019, I was on this program for 3 months with a view to returning to work after there. January, I was upgraded back to be able to pursue some form of career in the military. And I deployed overseas on an exercise that would give me the opportunity to test me being a Special Forces communicator again, and hopefully return to some form of normality and a job that I was passionate and excited about. Unfortunately, when I deployed on the said exercise, which wasn't too demanding and too, operationally focused, let's say, but I just wasn't in the right. I wasn't in the right frame of mind, but I also wasn't able to test the environment that I should have been in. There was a number of stops put in place that I wasn't able to move forward. I was often told no by the chain of command, so I wasn't given the opportunity to test myself back in that environment. And physically, I just felt drained quite regularly. My body was still dealing with this complex trauma, this adversity that I'd been through. So yeah, it was quite a frustrating process. But I got through bits of it. I still managed to deploy on the exercise, and it was actually when in 2020 when we were going into lockdown. So this thing called COVID caught us all off guard and came about. So I returned from the exercise on the Friday, and I think we went into lockdown on the Monday morning. So yeah, quite a weird time as well to deal with, but also I had all this going on. And I'm going to openly share this information and say, but I was that broken. I used to deal with a lot of my physical pain by punishing myself. So I would not physically hurting myself, but I would go out for a run, and I would push the run harder than what I was capable of doing. So I was physically blowing out. So I was sort of punishing myself that way, because I was pushing myself to be the person that I was before, but I was physically sore, I was broken, so I wanted to push myself in that element. And this particular day, I say particular day, it was the 10th of February, and it was my twins' birthday. I wasn't seeing my kids at the time. Things had turned a little bit sour with my ex-wife. We've been separated, obviously, for quite some time at this point. Things were amicable, but we wasn't seeing eye to eye, let's say, for instance. And I wasn't able to see my twins on their birthday, my twin girls. And that, alongside being also quite a frustrating time in that recovery process, returning from exercise, processing what I couldn't do out on exercise, and then also the future prospects of leaving the military and not being able to be the soldier that I was. I also had a hell of a lot of other, let's say, shit going on at the same time. So I was dealing with, let's put it in the context of loss of my career potentially, dealing with my injuries, both mentally and physically, the access to my kids, which I didn't have, separation and divorce from my ex-wife. And then because of the childhood that I was brought up in, my father was obviously very much busy working in the pubs and clubs and hotels that we were brought up in. And rightly so, he fulfilled his jobs, roles and responsibilities very well. But I was very much brought up by my grandparents. So my father figure for a lot of my childhood was my granddad, someone that I spent, very profound amounts of time with, exciting. We did lots of cool stuff together. He was very much someone that I looked up to. He got a year previously, so during the time that I was in hospital, he got admitted to hospital and subsequently died as I got discharged from hospital. So I didn't get any time with my granddad, someone that I'd spent a hell of a lot of time with. So it was really hard for me to process that. So exactly a year on, I was reminiscing all this stuff, and all that stuff I've just listed. I went out for a run, and I went out for a fucking hard run, and I pushed myself to the point where I nearly collapsed, because I just wanted to beast myself to the point where I could almost prove that I was the person that I was before, but also I was dealing with all this other stuff. And I came back in, and I'd not long stopped taking. I was on very high nerve pain relief for my arm, and I was trying to wean myself off it because it had a number of side effects that I didn't like, such as weight gain, loss of libido, other bits and pieces. And I just didn't like taking medication, so I wanted to wean myself off it. So I was reducing my medication, so my arm was in complete agony. And then I just beasted myself. I was in a very negative mindset because it was like a year after reminiscing all this kind of stuff. It was my twins' birthday. I couldn't spend the day with them. And I remember walking and getting in the shower and literally breaking down in tears. And I was literally broken. And I thought to myself, I was in my flat on my own. No one else was in there. It was pitch black. It was just the the bathroom light on in the corner of the bedroom. And I was sat on the floor in the shower, both physically and mentally broken. I was literally physically and mentally broken. And I was like, what's the point? And I was openly, talking to myself, and I was like, what is the point? What is the point of me living? I've lost my granddad, who's my father figure. I had no time with him when he was at the end of his life. I'm getting quite emotional now. I'd just been through this shit set of circumstances where my career was done. I was over. I was broken. I was going through a divorce where I thought we'd separated quite amicably and we could make things work, and I wasn't allowed to see my kids, and that was the biggest kick to me. My young twin girls, I wasn't able to spend their birthday with them and celebrate that with them, which ultimately being a father figure, so losing my father figure and then subsequently not being able to be a father figure was a double whammy. So I sat in the shower and I was like, I'm physically and mentally broken. What is the point of me living? I've got nothing to look forward to. I've got nothing to focus on. My career's done. All this stuff that I'd achieved and put my heart and soul into had gone. My kids that I'd produced, I wasn't able to spend time with. So yeah, I thought, I'm done with this. I'm done. I want to end my life. So I'd made loose plans, and I wasn't going to tell anyone about it because I didn't want to share that I was broken at that time. I was hiding a lot of emotional, heartache, and I'm getting a bit upset now, but I was never an emotional person. And I went upstairs and I said, right, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have some dinner, I'm going to finish my last meal, and I'm just going to go quietly. And for those reasons, I can't be a father figure. I lost my father figure. I had no career prospects. I was in a very, very weird circumstance. I thought, now's my time to get out. So I went upstairs and I cooked my last meal. And all I remember was this imbalance of, and I've only learnt this since, but this chemical imbalance in your brain. And I had no control over anything that I was doing. All my head was telling me was, I want a way out, and the only way out is to take your own life. And that's all I remember thinking. I don't even remember what meal I cooked. I remember it being in a pasta bowl, but I don't remember what meal I cooked on that night. I don't remember what I wore. I don't remember the process that I went through. I just remember cooking food and swigging a bottle of whiskey, and I was planning to end my life. You could say, fortunately enough for me, and this is where I'm now openly able to talk about it, but I had subsequently drank too much alcohol too quickly. I was in that much pain that I was trying to numb the pain by drinking alcohol. And I think a bottle of whiskey, quite a good bottle of whiskey I think it was as well, which is a shame, probably went 3/4 of the bottle in about 20 minutes, if that. So I was very, very much intoxicated very quickly, which subsequently led to me realizing then I needed to reach out to someone. And I reached out to a very good friend of mine who had also been injured whilst operating in the Special Forces, and had also been through similar mental and physical traumas. And I'm done. I'm going to see myself out, and I just want to let you know that I'm finished with life. And he said, no, stop. And I just this conversation now, I learned afterwards. I don't remember this conversation from the night because I didn't remember what had happened. And then a number of stuff unfolded that evening, and then I woke up in my dad's house near the Midlands the following morning with Kate, my now fiance, sat on the end of the bed crying, saying, we need to get you help, we need to get you some support. So I was almost given a second lifeline, clearly the first one being shot numerous times, and this one being a bit more personal, but wanting to take my own life because I was just so broken of the scenario that I was in and the things that I were going through. And I think the only two things that looking back at now, the only two things that I had going for me was that me and Kate were in a relationship. We'd only been together about 6 months. And things were going really well. And, we bounced off each other. And, I'm very thankful to her for her input and for still being with me today. Kate saved my life, ultimately, and my kids. I didn't, as much as things are still difficult nowadays, I still wouldn't want that burden of my children growing up with their dad that committed suicide. So I still think I had those elements going on in the back of my head. Amongst everything else was negative, like I didn't want to be about. So yeah, woke up at my dad's house the next morning and realised that I needed to ask for help. So that process then started. I subsequently got downgraded back to P0, so non-deployable, not fit for military service at the time, back at home on sick leave, but with a view of getting help and support. And I had access to a clinical psychologist where we work through a number of avenues of therapy, so CBT and EMDR, so CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, so talking through scenarios that I'd been through and trying to process everything that had happened. And the easiest way to share this information, to paint a picture of this information is your head is like a filing system. So it's like a big filing system. It has a number of big drawers, and then within those drawers, it has a number of files within those drawers. And everything that we do in life, everything apart from our autonomic nervous system, everything that we do in life is a piece of paper in a file, in a package that's in a drawer in a filing system in our heads, if that analogy works well. And hopefully it does. So I'm going to roll with it. So at the time, I had a number of drawers that were open, a number of filing systems that were on the floor, and a number of bits of paper that were spread all over the place. So I had to work with the psychologist to put these bits of paper in the right envelopes, put those envelopes in the right files, and those right files in the right drawers in order to file them away. So that's what we did. That's the process that we went through. So it took probably in excess of about 4 months to do that, 4 or 5 months, to do that filing process. So the elements of that were delivered through, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and something called EMDR, which is basically rapid eye movement processing, which is where you follow a light bar with your eyes, and it helps you process that information. So it helps you file away that information whilst talking about what you're going through or what the scenario is. So we did that for a number of months. So yeah, very much back into rehab, back into therapy, but more from a psychological perspective this time. And then I finished that treatment by the back end of 2020. I subsequently had a consultation with a psychologist that worked for the MOD. And after about 4 hours, she diagnosed me with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which helped me understand elements about what I was going through. So some of the stuff that I'd experienced from the operational tour, deployed with the infantry, some of the jobs that I'd been on out in the Middle East, some of the areas that I'd operated in. But yeah, it gave me an opportunity to process to process all that I was going through, as well as having that diagnosis of complex PTSD, as well as at the time I was also very anxious about stuff. I couldn't step through a doorway. I couldn't be the first person to open a door. So I had anxiety and depression at the same time. So we worked through all those stuff, and I wanted to get better again. So I openly talked about these things, and that's why I can now sit here today and talk about it, because I've been through that process of processing it for myself and talking about it quite openly, and hopefully helping other people on that journey. So unfortunately, though, when you're physically and mentally broken in the military doesn't, there's no job for you anymore. So I was put forward to a med board in February 2021, and subsequently the outcome of that medical board was that I was no longer fit for military service. So I was then subsequently put forward for medical discharge in October of 2021. So yeah.
Quite the journey.
Quite a journey.
To end an impressive career.
Yeah, frustratingly so. But yeah.
And you went through lots of different phases, but like you say, you've come out the other side in a positive way, because you're here now sharing that story to most probably going to help someone out there. So thank you for sharing that in such great detail. So once you have your medical board, you've then got to have your process, your transition back to civilian life.
Yeah. So
what's going on in your head to make that stepping stone away from the military?
Yeah. So that transition had to happen. So I knew in February I would be medically discharged. At the time, you don't get told the date straight away. There's an element of process of waiting for the decision to be made and the time frame in which that's going to happen. So part of that process was I reached out to a couple of friends and asked, what should I do? And for me, it was, as much as it was frustrating, I had to follow the process. I had to fully, take the bull by its horns and take it for a ride, because I was having to make that decision. I was having to follow that process. So there was no choice. I was leaving the military regardless. So, I reached out to guys that had transitioned recently or guys that had been through the process, and I said, what should I be doing? And the biggest thing that they said is network with people, get round to networking events, go to like fairs, like comms fairs, project fairs, all that kind of stuff, and go around and speak to people and really connect with them about what it is that you want to do and understand where your skills and expertise translate to civistry, where you see yourself in. Because this was, for me, flash to bang pretty quickly that I was a career person. I wasn't going to leave the military, so I wasn't prepared for this. So yeah, I had to start thinking about that. So I did. I reached out to some friends. I went to some fairs. I went to some networking events. I had help with writing my CV, all that kind of stuff. And then a friend of mine was working for a company. And the CEO heard about my story to some degree and heard about my journey and wanted to offer me a job. So I was very fortunate to be in a position where I had that offered to me. It was for a comms company. It was for a satellite communications company. A lot of my trade orientation was around satellite communication, so I had a lot of knowledge and expertise in that area. So I was able to fulfill this role, I believe. So yeah, I went and worked for them in the city in London for just over a year. So I was very fortunate that I had, and I'd started that job a couple of months before my discharge date. Okay. So I had an overlap. So I had a number of things going on at the time. One of those things was I come across this challenge called Kayak for Heroes.
Okay.
So before this had happened, whilst I was sat at home on sick leave, I was scrolling through social media, trying to find things to do and things to get involved in. And I was connected to this charity called the Armed Forces Para Snow Sport Team, and this post had come up on their platform that these injured veterans were going to do this kayak challenge, kayaking from Land's End to John O'Groats. I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. I was like, they were in their infinite phases of developing the team and training. So I thought, oh, maybe I could ask if they need any help or support. So I reached out to them and said, look, I'm at home on sick leave. I'm waiting to be medically discharged out of the military. Can I come along and get involved? I'll drive a vehicle. I'll be a helping hand. I just want to come and support you on your exped. And just be there, really. Just have something to look forward to. And they're like, yeah, cool. So I went down to their first training camp, which was at the end of 2020, in between lockdowns. And I very quickly found myself in a boat paddling. Okay. I was like, oh, this is not a support element. I'm now part of the team. So yeah, I very quickly went to being part of the team. So we did this Kayak for Heroes challenge. So alongside having that to look forward to, which we did in June 2021. I had this job opportunity that I was also looking forward to. So I had a lot going on at the time. I was doing some stuff with another charity called Walking with the Wounded, so a big military charity. They were going to do a walk across Oman, which had planned to do at the end of 2021, which actually finished on the date of my discharge date. So it would have given me something to focus on. So I was very fortunate that I was in a job that was supported by someone that knew what I'd been through, was in a job orientation, i.e. the trade was something that I was from, so I could do because of my military career, and was very supportive of military veterans. So they gave me the time off to do these expeditions, which was really cool. So I had a lot going on. So October the 21st, I think it was the 21st of October 2021, was a day that was a blur to me, because although it was a very poignant day, the last day of my military career, I had a lot of other stuff going on, which was also pretty distracting, but also pretty cool at the same time, which gave me that distraction. So, yeah.
Sounds like probably the best way that it could have been of a transition with all that stuff happening. So that's 2021. We're in 2024 as we record this. Your episode comes out next year in 2025. Are you still working for that company? Have you moved into a different role? Are you still finding your feet? How's the last few years been?
Yeah, so I think the last few years is probably very much similar to my military career, like bouncing around, trying different things. I'm very much still trying to find my feet. I don't know what I want to do in life at the moment and for the rest of my career. So I stayed with that comms company for a period of time. I then went and became a senior project manager working back for the MOD for a period of time, which I didn't like. I was sat behind a desk writing contracts which didn't fulfill my needs, but also it didn't keep me infused in any way, shape or form. So obviously I stepped away from that, and then I had a period of time where I was deciding what I wanted to do. In 2020, at the start of 2022, I signed up for Marathon des Sables. So I ran across the Sahara Desert, 6 days, 250 kilometers in 50-degree heat, which was a really cool challenge. So I've still got almost elements of the military, but now in Civvy Street. So I'm bouncing around doing different jobs. I'm still doing some cool expeditions and challenges. A friend approached me at sort of mid 2022 when I was sort of deciding to step back from Avanti Communications and then looking for another role somewhere else. And said, "Have you thought about the Invictus Games?" And I said, "No, I don't think the games is for me." And typically, I've got all four limbs. The games is for people that are, wheelchair bound or are seriously injured from the likes of Afghanistan and Iraq. And they said, no, you're rightly so. You've been injured in conflict, like in combat kind of thing. You're still an injured veteran, and you still got physical impairments as well as being diagnosed with PTSD. I think it would really help you on the journey that you're on at the moment, and in finding a new purpose, but also having the games to look forward to. So subsequently I did. I signed up for the Invictus Games. I got through the sifting process, and then I got selected to be a member of Team UK for the games last year in Dusseldorf in Germany in 2023. And what a journey, like absolutely amazing journey. Just to see the people that develop from being part of a sporting environment. And I definitely got the buzz of that team connection that I'd lost through leaving the military. I definitely got that buzz of sports again that I'd lost through not being able to compete because of my injuries. So yeah, really cool journey. Alongside that, I'd also ventured down indoor rowing. So I'd started indoor rowing competitively, and I went on to win a couple of medals and get a few British records. So British rowing picked up on me quite quickly. So I went and got classified. So classification is for someone with a physical impairment to sit in the right competitive area of that sport. So they're competing against like for like people. So yeah, got classified with British Rowing, went along, joined their program, joined their pathway, subsequently got progressed up from the pathway into the Paralympic development squad. Then came back from the Invictus Games, won a gold medal in indoor rowing, which obviously helped.
At the Invictus Games.
At the Invictus Games,
nice.
Yeah,
well
so I got a gold in indoor rowing and a bronze in cycling at the Invictus Games. And that just gave me that thrill and that buzz for sports again, something that I'd massively missed, both through being in an operationally heavy unit in the military, but also then subsequently being injured and medically discharged. So yeah, got that buzz again. And then I joined the British Rowing Paralympic Development Programme full-time on return from the Invictus Games. And so 2024 has been the year for me of being a full-time professional athlete, which is really cool. And then work-wise, I've had the opportunity. So I'm on a war pension. I'm on a medical discharge pension, which has allowed me that opportunity to find my feet, to find these opportunities. I do other things. I do keynote speaking, so I talk about my journey from complex trauma to elite sports, from everyone from junior and infant schools to universities. Charities, the public sector, private groups, companies. I go around and share my story and my journey from having that mindset change and having that element of resilience, bouncing back from adversity and going on to achieve those things of kayaking from Land's End to John O'Groats, running across Sahara Desert, winning a gold medal at the Invictus Games, being selected to be a professional athlete. So all these things help with that delivery of that keynote speaking. And then I do some stuff with an outdoors company, taking people out on hikes and hill walks in the great outdoors. So
nice.
A few other bits and pieces here and there, but ultimately still finding my feet, but have a passion for sport, developing youth in that sporting environment and sharing my story, really. So yeah.
Sounds like you're a busy guy. It does. But also sounds like you are, like you mentioned, finding your not niche, but areas that keep you going, that maybe set
my
new
brand.
goals.
I'm finding
who
my,
you are.
Yeah, I'm still I am still getting over. I was only medically discharged in 2021, which was 3 years ago, which is in the grand scheme of life is not really that long. Life is not very long anyway, but it's not very long. So I am still finding actually what I want to do. I don't want to stay in the comms world anymore. Yes, you might go, oh, you've got 16 years experience in the comms world. I've got a lot of project management experience. Why don't you go down that route? It doesn't interest me anymore. It doesn't. It's not what I want to be doing. If I want a career change, I want to completely change what I'm doing. Yeah. Obviously, I was quite a sporty person in the military, and I've started to find that out now. I've got coaching quals in some sports. I'm currently going through my ski coaching qualifications. I've just done my basic level 1. So I'm going overseas next. Most of the time for this season, I'll be overseas coaching in overseas in a ski resort. So that's another area that I'm developing. I've got outdoors qualifications. So I'm utilizing those now. And then just that rewarding element of, getting someone to engage in a sport or utilize sport as a tool for other things is really cool and really rewarding. So
yeah, no, that's cool. And that's going to take time, right? So good luck with that, and good luck with the Paralympic aspect and just all those things that your endeavor brings you forward. So that's really, really cool. But I think that pretty much does bring us up to date. So
Yeah, it does. Yeah, pretty much.
So we've covered quite a lot. But I just love what you've shared. It's been great. However, because we are up to date, we do have the opportunity to get some advice from you. So you've shared some great things. But let's start off with some advice for people that are thinking of joining the military. If you've got anything specific for SF or the army, then you can. If it's more generic, that's fine as well. But any advice for people thinking of joining the military?
I would either give to my younger self or share what I know now to someone joining the military is find what you want, find your why for joining the military. So whether that is, you want to get a trade and you want to pursue a trade, but also have the benefits that the military has to offer, then cool, go for that. If you're unsure, I'd probably say maybe reason with yourself as to why you're joining the military in the first place, and find your reason why as to what that is, and divulge into that a little bit more. Because you get a lot of people, unfortunately, join the military, they do their minimum time and leave, and they're like, oh, I had a crap time and I didn't really enjoy it. Well, you probably joined for the wrong reasons. Maybe if you'd have joined something else, you probably would have enjoyed it and stayed for a lot longer. So I'd probably question your why as to joining the military in the first place, and what you're going to gain from it, and what your reason for joining is. And ultimately, don't be scared to pursue different things. The military offers us so much in terms of travel, courses, qualifications, experience, trades. There's a whole plethora of things that the military can offer us. So understand that before you join, because is that career the right career for you, or are you making this decision because a friend has joined the military and you see them having a good time, so you're going to follow in their footsteps? So question the why, I'd say, is the biggest one. Great advice.
The next bit of advice is for veterans, and you fairly recently left. So have you got any advice that could help those that are about to leave? Maybe something that you've realized since you've been out?
I would extend that to say also not those who are about to leave, or those are unsure of whether they want to leave.
Okay.
It's not that bad. Like Civvy Street, I obviously left for completely different circumstances than doing 7 clicks and leaving the military. I did 7 clicks in a different way. Again, probably in reverse is if you are looking at leaving the military, start to plan that as early as possible. But it's not as bad as it is as you make it out to be. A lot of people go, oh, I can't leave this blanket of the military and blah, 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 blah. There are some fantastic companies out there, some fantastic organisations that really, really reap the rewards of having ex-military employees working for them. And there's a really cool veteran community out there that do different things. There's loads of cool charities that do so many things to get involved in. I would say don't leave the military and sit on your hands and don't explore things. There's far too many veterans that leave the military who sit on their hands and just don't engage, and then they go in a negative spiral, which is horrible to see, because that shouldn't be happening. So continue to engage with people, continue to have friends in the military as well as friends out of the military, and explore things. Like, it takes us time to find things. It takes us time to find our feet, but start that planning as early as possible. And ultimately, if you're not thinking about getting out, if you're in the military now and you're listening to this, you're going to leave the military at some point. So start thinking about that as early as possible and start setting that up. I'm not saying join the military and start thinking about leaving the day you join. But if you're well into a career, and at some point you're going to have to leave, is start planning that as soon as possible. Because you're going to have to leave at some point, and hopefully not unexpectedly like mine was, but by giving yourself as much opportunity as you can, then it will ease that process. And networking is the biggest one that I got. Network with as many people as possible. Build a network of people around you, both in industry and in other ventures in life, whether that's through friends or colleagues, or through other ventures, is networking, because that's ultimately a massive help. That helped me.
Great. Some great advice there. So thanks so much, Ben. How was it for you? Sharing your journey on this show?
I thought it was. I think it's cool when you can talk back over things. Like, I've not got emotional. Like I was probably gonna. I probably could have cried a little bit more than what I held it back well. But yeah, when you talk about those instances, I don't talk about them that in depth as very often, or very often at all. Often when I do my keynote speaking, it's a very broad brush of I went through this complex trauma and now I'm doing this. It's not I went through this complex trauma and this is what happened. So yeah, to go back over that is good to some degree, because it's a reflection on where I've been, and ultimately where I've got to today. Hopefully I can, by sharing the little bits that I've been through, I say little bits, but the little nuggets that I've shared hopefully can help somebody else, because ultimately that's what I'm passionate about nowadays is the suicide rate for males, young males between the age, I think it's like 22 and 36 is ridiculous. Like we shouldn't. A friend of mine committed suicide only a couple of weeks ago. The guy that we connected through the same charity together. I've known Pete for a couple of years. I got a message the other day to say he'd committed suicide, which is horrible to hear. So if I can, and that's part of where I'm sharing my story for different reasons. Dealing with complex trauma, dealing with grief, dealing with the loss of a loved one, dealing with the separation, the divorce, connection with my kids. I've got quite a complex story that I've managed to get over, but hopefully by sharing all elements of my story, I'm able to hopefully have a connection with someone that's going through it to go, actually, yeah, I need to make this change, or I need to think about this in a different light, and hopefully can help them on their journey.
Yeah, hopefully. But you've shared so much, so thank you for that, and in the detail that you've done. It really will help someone out there, I know. And also thank you for your time. You've just shared everything that you're busy with these days. So thank you for giving up some of your time for the show.
No, thank you for having me. And it's really important that we share these stories and we have the opportunity to talk. So anyone that is struggling, that can't talk, please come forward and talk. But yeah, given that opportunity to share my story and hopefully help others is really meaningful to me.
I'm sure you have.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And I say this to all my guests. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
No problem. It's been great, Ben. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. This has been Military Veterans Podcast. Out.